Okay. All right,
Mr.
thank you.
James Parsons.
That, oh, I know. It's missing. It's missing. Okay, thanks for everyone for being here tonight. As you recall the way we began this meeting, it was called to order. And 50 years ago, on this very evening, February 8th, 1963, those words were spoken for the very first time before this group. It was a group of about 15 or 18 guys. And I told you, well, to get it, I thought this would be important to give you a little feel for what ham radio was like. There we go. What things were like in 1963. I brought that issue of QST to Show and Tell back in November, and you know what it was, what you might expect from back then. Hams did a lot of building, especially things with tubes. The Collins 32S3 was brand new. There had been count them, two Oscar satellites. I guess that's redundant since satellite is in the Oscar acronym. But anyway, there have been two Oscars. They're talking about a third one, which wouldn't go anywhere, I don't think. Hams were complaining. Oh, they were complaining about too many contests and newcomers not having enough technical knowledge, usual things. But what was Vienna like? Well, one didn't look like this. This is a fairly recent Landsat picture. Vienna was quite a different place back then. This was a time when gas cost about 25 cents a gallon, and the average income was $5,600 a year. Interstate 66 existed only in pieces. It'd be almost 2 years before the section between Centerville and the Beltway was completed, and it'd be another decade or so before it was finished inside the Beltway. So this was a sticks. Speaking of sticks, this place called Tyson's Corner, that was just a rural hilltop. No shopping centers, no office buildings, no traffic, except at that one at the corners. Freight trains were still running on the W and OD, but not for much longer because they were going to be. It was discontinued in 1968. But you could get a beer and some chili dogs at the Vienna Inn. So why form a ham club? Well, that's an easy question. There wasn't one out here. There were a lot of hams out this way though, and hams being hams, they had a knack for finding each other, either on the air or they'd spot a tower or some wires in someone's backyard and say, oh, that's me, that's one of us. So they thought, well, geez, we need a ham radio club. And this is from the organizational meeting. This is when they had a meeting to decide whether they're going to have a ham club at all. It was on January 25th, which was also a Friday night and also our meeting night. And they got together and said, hey, you want to have a club. And Ray Johnson recalls that the closest club at that time was in Alexandria, which was 8 for a piece without too many highways. He says there were hams who knew each other in the area, so we wanted to socialize to some extent and do some radio things. And so, a ham radio club based in what was an outlying suburb of Washington, D.C. was born. So, now if you're going to have a club, if you're going to have a club, you need to have a name. And it needs to be distinctive. So, club member, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this right, Ray, Al Valieri. Valier, K4HTA. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? He read through several QSTs. He saw what other clubs were using, and he found one that sounded good, and that was the Vienna Wireless Society. And so we were born. And these are two of the club's logos. This is the familiar one, the powwow logo. That is not our official logo. This is. This is the one that appears on top of our stationery. And if you look very closely, you'll see a secret message. So from these not so humble origins, the VWS grew to become one of the largest and most active clubs in metropolitan Washington, D.C. Now remember, the goal of the club was to do one thing, to have fun with radios. And what better way to do that than with Field Day? The club's first Field Day was that summer in 1963. It was in Glendon Park. And according to the QST results, there were 7 participants. They operated 4 transmitters and used Ray's call at the time, K4DXO Portable 4. And let's see here. They made 354 contacts with a power multiplier of 2 for 30 to 150 watts. And other credits, they got a total of 2,217 points, which was pretty good considering that they had to shut down in the middle of the night. Apparently some neighbors around Glendon Park were a little upset about all the noise, and they called the police, and they had to So there's some pictures. The park looks very similar. Now, after, in '64 they had it at Camp Washington, and then a few years later they had it at Tyson's Corner, which again looks a little bit different from today. The generators look a little different. And I don't know, those scruffy, you may recognize those 2 scruffy people in that picture. There's that guy on the right again. But since the 80s, we've had Field Day at Burke Lake Park, and there have been a lot of configurations of equipment.
Is that John Birch up there?
Excuse me?
Is that John Birch?
More than likely, if there's a tower with VWS, something to have to do with VWS, yeah, it's John Birch. We've had a lot of antenna configurations, a lot of radio configurations. These are Ken Anderson and Barney Novine, 2 longtime members. Always some food, and that's never a problem. Like I said, we've had big towers, we've had little towers, we've had all kinds of operators. And all kinds of people show up. There's Mr. Quentin. And some people who experience Field Day for the first time, and it's amazing to see what they go on to become. That's Ben Gelb, if you don't recognize him.
Oh, yeah.
So, now as I said earlier, folks out, the hams out this way were able to keep in touch. They had nets and they saw each other. And nets are something, you heard about all the nets we operate now. That's been a tradition out here for a long time. Even before the club was founded, there'd be, informal get-togethers on 10 meters and on 6 meters, various times, various days of the week, various frequencies. But in the early 1970s, another new mode for local communications soon became quite popular, and that was 2-meter FM using simplex and repeaters. Well, the club was not going to be left behind. That is the club's first repeater. It was crafted by Barney Novine, WA4HIM. It's a pair of Drake TR22 transceivers with an amp and a little control unit. And that's it. A whopping 10 watts. And I wish Jim Dixon was here tonight. He said a story. He had a story when the club applied for a repeater. There were no frequencies available. They went to a TMARC meeting and said, we'd like to put up a repeater. And they says, well, sorry, no frequencies. 2 meters is crowded. All booked up. So they decided to stay at the meeting anyway. And Jim was saying that during the course of the meeting, it was learned that a guy in Alexandria who had 146.685, coordinated, he'd moved out of the area and moved to North Carolina. So they jumped in and says, we'll take it, we'll take it, we'll take it. And they didn't know what to do. TMARC did not know what to do, so they said, okay, you can have a repeater, but it can only be 10 watts. So that was it. And eventually it grew. It the repeater was first located at Vienna Town Hall, but it didn't stay there long because the police department needed some more room. So fortunately, Barney was in a...
Is that in Barney's house? Or?
No, that's at the that was at the town hall. But fortunately, Barney was a member of the American Legion, and he got permission to move the repeater over there. And the in 1985, it's been there since 1985. And as you heard, we've had other repeaters in the club over the years. There was one on, we've had the 441 at Fair Oaks Hospital for a good while. We had a 220 repeater at one time. That was Bill Moran, W4MIBs. That was sort of his baby, and really didn't go anywhere. I think it had a great coverage of Bill's backyard. Bill also had a packet nose for a while, and the club maintained a packet nose for a while. But thanks to Skip and thanks to John Trancy, the repeaters are chugging along and helping us stay in touch. Now, in addition to repeaters and field day, that's led to other activities over the years, like our balloon launches. And
Eight so far?
this is a harmless experiment. Yes, and they've balloons have wound up in some interesting places. Let's see, we've had fox hunts. And of course, we've had picnics with food. Always lots of food. And of course, it's also part of field day as well. And whether it's tied into an event or just a family get-together, like I said, food has been, we've made the joke, the calories per kilo is sort of a recent incarnation. Well, actually, it has been around for a while because one of the club's first activities was September 7th, 1963 at Brook Lake Park. It was a club picnic. And writing in the relay, activities manager Andy Casey wrote that the picnic was intended to, quote, to allow our wives a chance to see what kind of company we keep. Let's see, the participants were to finish their own chow and beverages. There are games for all ages, plus gifts and balloons for the children. And Andy later wrote that the picnic was a great success and something to look forward to every year. And of course, when it comes to eating and everything's out, we always look forward to eating and celebrating club milestones when we can. And everybody seems to have a good time except that guy on the left. I don't know what his problem is.
Too much shade.
But as much fun as we have with operating with picnics and with events, we've never forgotten our responsibility to the public. And we've been involved with a lot of public service activities over the years, like Spook Watch, providing some extra eyes to the Vienna police on October 31st. We have and that's evolved into helping with the Vienna Halloween Parade, where we help marshal all those costume kids, and I swear to God, I do not know where all those kids come from. Well, I know where they come from, but the volume of them, the masses. We help with various races. Obviously, the Marine Corps Marathon has been a big deal for us. We, for a few years, we did the Middleburg Research Ride, which was experimenting with different, helping track horses while they handle the way, what they ate and how they performed. And you never know what kind of friends you're going to meet when you're doing an event like this. We've also strived to educate the public about our hobby and what we do and who we are. That is Paul Wilkins, 84CY, a two-time president, and he and Quentin, I'm just say this as an aside, I've been in this club since the mid-'80s, and Paul Wilkins and Quentin Taylor are two people I wish I could be like when I grow up. I have to grow up first, though. That's another one of our demonstrations where we show people what we do. And that's evolved into doing the things at Sally Ride Festival at George Mason, helping show that, yes, actually, there are actually girls in this hobby. Gasp, shock, dismay. Yes, Sheila, you're not alone. And then the shuttle contact, which, Pete, I just think you described that as the longest 3 minutes of your life.
Certainly was.
When we couldn't connect with them. And then, of course, there's a reason we're here tonight, our meetings. bi-monthly. We've had some great programs, some great program directors over the years, Mike Stussy, Kevin, the most recent program directors who have given us, so many great things. We've learned a lot. And I didn't include any slides of those because not too many pictures were taken, and besides, just look around. That's what these meetings look like. And speaking of meetings, the club has had several meeting locations over the years. The first official meeting was at Marshall Road Elementary School. But then for a couple years, they met in members' basements. Ray's basement was a home for a lot of meetings. It just sort of rotated around until they built the Vienna Community Center, and that was our home for a good while, until they had to go out and renovate it, and then we became homeless. But we wound up a couple places, and this has been a home for the most recent years. Now, all these activities, all these events, all this fun we have, how do you pay for it? You pay for it. Well, you get to talk. Oh, these are some of the other operating events, I'm sorry. This was NAQP at Town Hall, and some of the folks who are sadly no longer with us. This is how we pay for it. Winterfest, this is one of the early flyers. The actual first Winterfest was February 25th, 1973. Now, it's not as big as Dayton, not as big as Gaithersburg. Back when there was Gaithersburg, it's not as big as Manassas. But people always look forward to Winterfest because it's the first Hamfest of every year. And the first one was held on February 25th, 1973 at the Community Center. And according to the club minutes, the event drew 500 people and grossed $1,006. And so the net after expenses was $800. And that was particularly good news because I was reading the minutes from the previous July, and I noted that the treasury was empty. So I'm sure that was a very brief treasurer's report back then. And as you know, Winterfest was held at the Community Center for a couple more years. The flea market was always fun, although it was hard to get people to pay because they would come look at the flea market and then not bother to go inside and pay their $6. The Winterfest, like any other event, like anything else the club does, has always required a lot of effort to put on. It's required volunteers, and the club has been blessed with some really great volunteers over the years who, lent their minds, lent their ideas, lent their backs to organize events, maintain our repeaters, and do things like that. But some of the most people who have given the most to the club are the 39 individuals who have served as president. Appropriately, our first president was a Ray, and our current president is a Ray, which makes me think I should have could have named this presentation From Ray to Shining Ray.
Glad you did.
That's a smart idea. Now, several of these, and there have been women presidents too, but several of them are no longer with us. Several others have relocated. But we're really fortunate that so many past presidents are still in the club and they're still active. And I'd like to invite anyone who's served as a past president. Would all the past presidents please stand up and be recognized? Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, now DWS has had some notable participants who have been guests. Vic Clark, W4KFC. He was a longtime Roanoke Division Director of the League. He was president for too brief a period. He presided at several club banquets and often made meetings when he was in town. One of our meeting speakers, you may recognize this name, Bob Bruninga, WB4APR. He gave a presentation that was not on APRS. It was about a new design for amplifiers. So he was always been thinking about things. And another member, honorary member, was Barry Goldwater, K7UGA. He was given an honorary membership in the club when he announced his retirement from the U.S. Senate. He never attended a meeting that we know of, but a couple of days, this is interesting, within a couple of days after they sent the letter awarding the membership, he wrote back. I mean, it didn't, get passed from some aide or something. It was just dated a couple of days later that he thanks us for being a member of the club, and until he became a silent key in 1998, he received the real one. And I'm sure he found it quite interesting while he was out there in Goldwater country and doing those things. Several local leaders have been VWS members, including longtime Vienna Mayor Charlie Robinson. And recognize him? The guy on the left? Yeah, I thought you would. Roger Seaman was a longtime Vienna Town Councilor member. He became a silent key in 1996, but his commitment to community service has been continued through the efforts of his wife Jane, who was elected to town council in her own right and now serves as Vienna's mayor. And we're pleased that she's with us tonight. Jane, would you like to say something to us?
Roger would be just so pleased to see so many of you here and to see how much the club has grown and how active you are. And of course, Ray was just always there for him and helped me after he died to disperse of some of the things that they ended up at the Hamfest. But it always seemed like when you had your Winter Hamfest, it was the worst weather. I don't know how many of you remember that, but it always was cold. Of course, it's February, but it always rained, and it was muddy. I will never forget all the mud that would come back into the house. But he loved it, and it was a big part of his interest and his hobby. So much so that I was cleaning out in the basement, and I came across a lot of, he loved to put it all together, and Heathkit, I don't know how many of you remember, I have a lot of Heathkit manuals here, so I would be happy to donate these to your and then also, in here, one of these, here, and I noticed you already have a copy of this, but it's the bylaws. And of course, the names are people that we would, and 1976, and Ken Anderson was president, or at least he signed. Warren Hayes, Art Kimberly, oh dear, remember him, George Miller, and Bill Moran. So all good friends and good people. So I'm going to leave all that with you. And, the rest of this are just notebooks that he had that he would write his diagrams and practices. Practice everything that he was doing. So
we have a club library, so that.
Well, this will all. Well, you can have it all if you want. I really don't need any of it. But Vienna Wireless has always been a really important part of the town of Vienna, and we're just so pleased that it's called Vienna Wireless and that you started here, and that you've helped so much. You've helped the police. You've helped us with. The Halloween parade, and I don't know if you still do Spook Watch or not, but it's very, very valuable. And I noticed that our former mayor, Charlie Robinson, who was a member of this club, wrote a proclamation. So not to be outdone, we have a proclamation here for your 50th. So I will put on my glasses and read this. Whereas the Vienna Wireless Society is celebrating 50 years of continuous service in amateur radio and amateur radio organization in the United States, and whereas the Vienna Wireless Society has demonstrated a strong commitment to public service by supplying reliable radio communications for community events, by maintaining an organization of men and women skilled in the art of wireless communication, by standing ready to furnish emergency communication in times of major disasters, and by providing wholesome and educational recreational opportunities for persons of all ages. And whereas it is appropriate that these public service activities of the Vienna Wireless Society be recognized, and whereas the Vienna Wireless Society has provided invaluable service to the town of Vienna, not only during emergencies, but also during public events such as the Halloween parade. And whereas the service of the Vienna Wireless Society is appreciated by all Vienna residents. And now, therefore, I am Jane Seaman, Mayor of the town of Vienna, Virginia, on behalf of all the citizens of the town of Vienna, do hereby proclaim the week of March 20th through March 26th, 2013 as Amateur Radio Week.
Hey.
So there you go. It's not framed framed, I'm sorry.
Oh, we
Had I
can take
known
care of
that I
that.
had to live up to
We
Charlie's
can
thing,
take
I
care of
could have
that.
framed it for you, but anyway, just to let you know that we really do appreciate it. And it's just really, just to look around and see all of you here and still so active, I just know how happy we do. I really do. So thank you, and I'm gonna leave all of that.
Mayor, thank you so much. Cleaning out the basement and bringing stuff to the meetings and leaving it. Wow, Roger trained you well. We all say that. We all say that. Okay. Another priority for the club after it was founded was to become an ARRL affiliated group. And according to our certificate we received on our 25th, we were affiliated on December 7th, December 7th, 1963. So again, within the first year, we became part of the league. And again, we're also pleased tonight to have Dennis Bodson, the current Roanoke Division Director.
Yep.
And Dennis, would you like to say a few words?
All right, thank you. It'll be a hard act to follow in the last one, but I'm very pleased to be with you tonight. I would like to start off by thanking you wherever the president's hiding. Yeah, the president, Her Honor, Jane Seaman, the mayor of Vienna. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mayor. Jim, members, and guests. I'm really full of enthusiasm and joy to be with you tonight. I really should have been euphoria, but enthusiasm for you. But you can check with a couple of my colleagues. They would have some substitute wording for those two words, but you can check with them later on that. When I got this request, I figured out, oh, okay, what's the first thing I got to do? And I have to figure out, well, what has anybody done before? Well, apparently not much. And I said, well, we are going to do something. So I spoke to some of the people of the league, and we got a plaque made up for you all for me to present to you. So the first thing I did, the plaque arrives, and I opened it up, and I said, well, let's check out and see what's in here, okay? I got a packing slip, okay? It doesn't say too much, a lot of words, a plaque, no name on it or anything like that. It doesn't have a cost on it either. So it's either of no cost, or the cost is so high they didn't want to put it on here. So I think it somewhere falls in between. It's certainly not zero. So the next thing I did was to say, all right, to get the plaque right, and I was on pins and needles trying to get this thing off here, and I did. And I said, Jesus, this looks pretty decent here. So we did something right here. So I said, all right, the next thing I got to do is where is it going to be? I think I contacted you, Jim. You told me at Oakton High School. Well, I knew how to get to Oakton High School in a flash, and I certainly did. I officiated high school football for 33 years here in Northern Virginia, and I've been to Oakton High School, God knows how many, dozens of times with that. So I got here, all these cars, and gosh, I said, where's a parking spot? So everybody was beating each other out, and I said, nothing changes, it's still the same, you know. So I said, that looks lit up there. So I waited, somebody just had come out the door, I grabbed the door and went in, and I said, gee, it's well lit, but there's nobody here. I said, this is not good, I see people around. Then I heard a cacophony of voices, and I looked down the hall. There's mankind down there. So I went down there, and the first thing I did, and I should have known better, I asked one of the students where the library was. Now, I should have known from my high school, my football days as an official, where's the coach's office? Oh, it's somewhere down there. Okay, so they said, go down here and turn, do this. Okay, I did it. Finally, someone comes, no, you're supposed to go straight ahead to the carpeted hallway and turn right. Well, I finally made it down here, and all things went quite well with that. I am very pleased to be here. It's not often that I have an opportunity to present an award, and especially an award for 50 years as being an affiliated club of the ARRL. It certainly is quite a recognition, and I'm glad that you asked me to be here with you and that I could make this presentation to you. So, Mr. President, if you would come up as the presiding official, I would like to present this to you, and if this is being recorded, I guess you'd like me to take it out of the box here. I assure you it's not. Well, these things, as you can see, I have to get one of my assistant directors up here. He could have unfolded this and gotten it here. But on behalf of the American Radio Relay League, I would like to present this plaque to you on your 50th anniversary, and I'd like to read it if I may, please. The ARRL Roanoke Division honors the Vienna Wireless Society K4 HTA 50th anniversary, presented on February the 8th, 2013, by yours truly as a division director. Congratulations for a half century of service.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to leave the box and all the packing so that, but I will take the packing slip. There's some encrypted message on here. They really didn't want me to see it.
All right, thank you, Dennis, that's great, we appreciate that, thank you so much. Okay, well, let's see, we've covered a little bit of history tonight. It's hard to encapsulate 50 years into everything, but I guess that brings up the next question. What next?
Wow.
I don't know, you might. Yeah, we're all gonna might. Oh, and tomorrow, as we begin our next 50 years, we certainly hope the club's gonna be around in 2063. And I'm sure it's gonna be hard to imagine what radio will be like by that time. Just as it might have been difficult for those guys meeting in each other's basements to imagine what the hobby would be like in the 21st century. I mean, could they have imagined things like software-defined radios and DX spotting sites on the internet, and the credit card-sized dual-band radios? I wouldn't. So how do you sum up BWS's first 50 years? Well, you know, this presentation, this everything we've done, it could have been a heck of a lot more elaborate. We could have made a video, we could have had a huge banquet, we could have had parades, we could have had, you know, things that other clubs have done when they've had milestone anniversaries. But you know, ham radio clubs, like their members, a lot of their members, turn 50 only once. I haven't turned 50 yet, at least emotionally. But recognizing what BWS has meant to its members and to the community then, now, and in the future shouldn't be limited to just one thing. I think the best way to commemorate the club's 50 years is to focus on what we've always done and what we'll be doing this year. Having fun, having our 41st Winterfest in a couple of weeks. Our operating events like QRP to the Field, our 50th anniversary themed QRP to the Field, and our other events like the Worked All States Challenge and the Solder Something Challenge, and then Field Day coming up. Our meeting programs that'll be coming up, the CW forums and the practice nets, and then the variety of nets. You know, all the things that we've always done. You know, that's I think the best way to observe this 50th anniversary is by doing the things that the club has always done. The same reason they got together 50 years ago. Get together, socialize, and have fun with the radios. So, happy birthday, BWS. Here's to the next 50 years and more. Thank you all. Bonus. Thanks to our member, Phil Wary, we have collected a lot of club pictures, a lot of scans of relays, documents. Some of these certificates have been scanned in, and flyers, and also my big hobby is trivia, so I came up with a 50 questions about BWS. This is your to commemorate 50 years. Everyone gets one. Please take it home. Go down memory lane on your own time. I apologize for some of the PDFs. I was sort of pressed for time to get a lot of things scanned in, and so I took them to a nearby copying place that did it, and there was a little communications let down, and it wasn't quite what I hoped to do. But it's in here. You just sometimes need to, you know, rotate and, you know, clockwise. So before you leave tonight, come on up, get one again. Thanks very much to Phil Ward for and we'll see you in 2063.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Come up and do it.
Someone besides